welcome everyone. If you're here for De-escalate yourself, 3 centering practices in times of conflict, then you're in the right place. And I'm grateful to all of you who made the time to come here, not just to hear what I have to say on the topic, but also that I know that if you're here, it's also because there are many other people you are caring about and offering your compassion to, and who will benefit from you being centered. A bit about me for those of you who don't know me. My name is Wiens Chu, and I'm the executive director of Baba Tree International. And our mission is practical peace. Basically, we try to make peace practical and actionable for everyday people. And we work both in programs like this, offering training to regular folks. And then also we work on front lines crises and conflicts. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and get started. So this is a photo I took the other day. And it's, I'll just say this throughout the presentation, any photos or images you see are personal ones. I'm not a fan of stock photos. And so part of the way I can help create connection is by sharing images from my life as well. And there's something about this image that spoke to me about what it means to de-escalate yourself and center in the time of conflict. I also read this quote the other day. People go into an atrocity-producing situation no more violent or no more moral or immoral than you or me. Ordinary people commit atrocities. So this is by Robert J. Lifton, who has interviewed and studied lots of horrible situations in history, a lot of the ones we consider the most violent. The bombing of Hiroshima, Vietnam, Nazi Germany. So he's interviewed, in many of these cases, he's interviewed victims of the situation and what we would normally call the perpetrators or the actors who contributed to the violence. And I found it very moving and a personal remembering for me that this is what he has to say to sum that up, that ordinary people commit atrocities. So there's really nothing that separates me from someone who does something that is that I would consider horrible and violent. And so the reason I'm bringing this here is, in a way, this is part of my centering practice. This is kind of a bonus centering practice, if you will, which is to remember that nothing separates me from those I might label violent. And it also is a reminder of how important it is to use my centering practices. Once you know them, you need to use them. And this is a good reminder of why we want to do that. So what do I mean by centering? I think it's a good place to start. Centering can mean a lot of different things. So I want to share with you a quick model. This is derived from Daniel Siegel and also Jeremy Hunter. And it's a model of looking at our nervous system. So to start with, a lot of the times when we think of ourselves as being off-center, I think a lot of us are in what we'll call here the red zone, which is when we are in fight, flight, high stress, panic, overwhelm. Essentially, our nervous system is on overdrive trying to protect. And we could also call this a nervous system in greater internal chaos. There's so much going on in our system that it's hard to make a good decision, a choice that's going to be life-supporting. On the flip side, there's what we can call the black zone, sometimes also called the blue zone. It's when our nervous system is the opposite. It's in freeze, shut down. It's numb, depressed, exhausted. This is what you could also call the nervous system in a state of greater internal rigidity. Everything's kind of locked up you find it hard to get up the energy to do anything, much less be a contributor to supporting peace. In between is what we can call the green zone. We all know this is when we're feeling relaxed and energized, engaged, adaptable, resilient. This is like the dynamic balance of our nervous system. It's not that I intentionally left out words like calm in this, because it's not that we're like just in this, the stereotypical Zen state of being, monotone and passive and one emotion. This could be a lot of emotions, but the key is that in the green zone, we're basically in control of our choices. We can make conscious decisions, and we can shift on a dime from, being super, super excited and energized to super relaxed and calm. But the key is that in the green zone, we're engaged, we're adaptable, we're resilient. Yeah. So the reality is, as a human being, we're all of these things, and none of them are bad. There's good reasons for our nervous system to be in the red zone at times when we need to protect ourselves. And there's good reasons for us to be in the black zone at times. If we're in a state of grief or mourning someone we know passed, the body needs to go through that. So there's nothing wrong with any of those states. But what I'm talking about when I'm talking about centering practices is practices that help guide us back to the green zone, particularly when we end up in the red or black zone, in a situation that maybe we don't actually need to be or want to be. So the question I have for you is, as you come to this webinar, what conflict is knocking you off center? Which is another way of saying, what's bringing you here? Why are you here? What's knocking you off center? Why are you wanting centering practices? So I invite you just to consider that for a moment and bring that conflict to mind, reflect on it. And so here, I just want to offer a brief blessing or prayer, if you will, a wish, which is to say, I'm confident that all the conflicts that you all are thinking about right now, there are people suffering, and we may not be able to alleviate that suffering today. So I just want to extend a blessing right here for everyone who's in all of these conflicts, including you, that you might be free from suffering and find happiness. May your needs be met. So I want to start with introducing the first practice on this webinar, which is what I call Know Your Neighborhood. So in our work at Babatry International, particularly when we're going into conflict zones, but this could be anywhere, not just what we normally think of as conflict regions in certain countries, but we also think about this when we go to consult with an organization or a community. One of the first things we do as a team is to really sit down and think about the situation we're going into. What is the culture there? What does respect look like? How is safety met in these situations? What strategies do we need to use or to adapt in order to be effective in supporting conflicts in those neighborhoods, right, in those regions? So for this call, I'm actually making the assumption that for many people right now, the neighborhood you're actually operating in is social media. Certainly that's where a lot of people found out about this webinar. And while each of you can probably do your own reflections and research for other communities or situations, I wanted to share a few things about social media, because what I find increasingly is that many people don't actually have a deep understanding of the neighborhood of social media and how it affects conflict. So here are some facts I pulled. A 2020 research study, peer-reviewed, of 11,000 people, ages 20 to 97, A person's social media usage level significantly predicts their level of neuroticism and anxiety 1 year later. A 2013 study in a series of peer-reviewed studies when pairs of strangers were asked to have meaningful conversations, their ability to connect emotionally was significantly reduced if a mobile phone was visible. So I just want to add a little bit more to that. In a particular study, the mobile phone wasn't being used or even necessarily on, it was just visible. Yeah, something interesting to reflect on. If a mobile phone is visible, it significantly reduces the ability to connect emotionally. Anger is the emotion that travels farthest and fastest on social media compared to all other emotions. Social media continues to profit by amplifying messages of extreme content, which then attract more views, which hikes up advertising revenue. These platforms make money from anger and extreme content. And here's an interesting counterpoint. When encountering someone with an opposing political viewpoint, people are more likely to judge them as warm and intelligent if they hear that person's ideas spoken rather than written down. People are more likely to judge others as warm and intelligent if they hear their spoken words rather than written words, right? So most social media is text-based, right? Written. Okay, so how is this all a practice? Well, like our teams do when we go into different neighborhoods and countries, we need to take that knowledge and put it into something. So the first thing is just a way to sum up all of what I just shared. Here's my metaphor. Trying to create peace on social media is like trying to stop people from drinking at a bar while you are also drinking. Okay? Social media literally makes money the more you engage. More conflict equals more engagement. So you probably wouldn't try to go to a bar to stop people from drinking, especially not while you were drinking yourself. We need to think about that the context of social media is one in which it's all about conflict. That's literally what makes engagement happen on social media, and that's how they make money. So if you're to practice with that, the first rule of thumb I would suggest is only go on social media if you are in your green zone. Don't go on social media if you're in your red or black zone. Another rule of thumb I use voice or face-to-face communication if you want to connect to someone, especially in conflict. And I add here, ideally without a phone present. Put the phones in a different room. Yeah, I know that's not always possible, but at least use voice, knowing that hearing each other's spoken voice increases the likelihood that you will each perceive the other as warm and intelligent. And the last one is a very simple boundary for myself, and I suggest for others, do not go to social media to center. In other words, that temptation to go pop on social media for a little dopamine hit of maybe someone likes you or commented or someone you enjoy seeing their stories helps you in your day. I think it's much more likely, given the context, the neighborhood of social media, what the rules of engagement are there, that it's not a great place to go to center. Yeah. So this is my practice around just considering social media as a neighborhood. So what can we do instead? So my second centering practice has to do with coming home to the body. And so in this picture, you see my 3-year-old has their foot on the earth here on the ground. And my 3-year-old's an interesting case because she has a very anxious brain, and we've seen how she is when she is in like a typical American suburban house. She gets very anxious. And it's fascinating how the second you put her on the earth with her skin in contact with the ground, where she can really feel both her body and the natural environment, how much it naturally calms her nervous system. It's a resource we all have to help us come back to the green zone. and it's good to make use of it. So specific recommendations. For those in your black zone, let's start there. If you're finding yourself in states of depression, numbness, exhaustion, or freezing up, just numbing out to the world, one recommendation that I found particularly useful is engage in exercise that's enjoyable and gets the heart rate up for several minutes. So I'm intentionally not including examples here that we normally hear, like go for a run, go for yoga, all those things, because I think we could start to hear it so much that becomes like a chore, like work, like, oh, we have to go for a run today, or I have to go do my yoga practice. So my examples are, this can be playing tag with kids. This could be dancing to a favorite song. It doesn't have to be what people normally recognize or think of as exercise. The point is that it's fun and enjoyable, heart-opening, and it gets your heart rate up for several minutes. When we're in the black zone, part of the problem is that we are so shut down, our internal systems have become rigid. We want to shake that up a bit, and we want to do something that is life-affirming, right? So don't hesitate to make anything your exercise practice, as long as it can get your heart rate up and you're enjoying yourself while you're doing it. For folks in the red zone, I'm going to suggest meditation and mindfulness. But I get there's 100 different ways to meditate, 100 different, 1,000 forms of mindfulness. And so I want to give you a specific practice. Many of you may have your own meditation and mindfulness practices, which is wonderful. And again, the point here is to find a way to take that state of inner chaos and create some regularity or rhythm with it. If you think about like a heart echocardiogram, if you imagine a heart that's in the state of attack or rest, and it's kind of jumping around or not it's arrhythmic, what we want to do is create a regular rhythm, right? So meditation and mindfulness can take that nervous system that's bouncing off the walls and bring it into a regular rhythm. So the practice I want to show you is one that I like because many forms of meditation and mindfulness can get very heady and intellectual. It can take us away from actually getting grounded into our green zone, or it can sometimes even agitate ourselves. So this is one that I like because it's so structured and fast and predictable that I find it very useful. So this is one, it's called the box breath. And it's a very simple principle. Basically, you inhale for 4 seconds, hold that for 4 seconds, exhale for 4 seconds, and then rest in that after the exhalation for 4 seconds. And I'm going to invite us all to do that now. And what I suggest is, as a way to just check out how this can work, before we get started, I want to invite you again to bring that conflict to mind that you brought forward earlier and said was part of the reason you're here, why you're having trouble to center. And just bring that conflict to mind and allow yourself to feel a little bit of the agitation, the emotions that you might feel around it, the thoughts. And now join me for the box breath. Inhale 4 seconds. Hold. Exhale. And rest. 2 more times. Inhale, 2, 3, 4, hold. 2, 3, 4, exhale. 2, 3, 4, and rest. 2, 3, 4. Inhale. Hold. Exhale. And rest. That was 3 16-second box breaths, 48 seconds. And just take a moment, just check to see your nervous system. is a very quick practice. Imagine we can all do a little bit more. But imagine how quickly you could use that at any given moment, even just one time, even just one 16-second practice in any given moment to relax your nervous system, bring it into some state of order. Oops. So I want to bring to practice number 3, which I call Tend to Tears and Fears. So this photo is of an altar that we set each morning at our house. This is something my wife got us started in, my wife, Catherine Cadden, for those of you who know her. And on our altar, we pull some human needs each day. Excuse me. We pull some human needs each day to reflect on, guide us in our day, carry us blessings. And the reason I'm sharing this photo is to kind of lead us into what I mean by tending to tears and fears. So maybe we found some calm with the box breath. Maybe we found some calm with a mindfulness or meditation practice. But what I've always found is that even with mindfulness and meditation, there is often still the lingering question, okay, I'm feeling a little calmer now, but now what? I still felt something around that conflict. I still have something coming up for me. So what do we do with that? And that's what I want to talk about now as our third centering practice. So the first principle is just simply feel whatever you feel. There's no negative feelings here. So even right now, if you bring to mind that conflict that perhaps brought you here, what do you feel emotionally, body sensation wise? What do you feel? No negative feelings means if you're angry, great. If you're stressed out, great. If you're terrified, great. Feel it. Allow yourself to feel it. From there, the practice is tune into the tears and fears, meaning behind the anger, behind the despair, the overwhelm, the stressed outness, the panic, even the numbness. Ask yourself, what are the cries here? What are you crying about? What are the tears here? What are you terrified of? Listen for that tender, young voice inside that's like a child crying out. Can you hear the child crying out in yourself right now? As an example for myself, that I notice as I ask myself that question, can I hear the child crying out inside? I feel the tears like right behind my cheeks. I feel this shortness of breath. I feel small. There's a smaller me, being expressed, and it's terrified, and it's wanting comfort, wanting security. Which brings me to the third part of this practice, which is to hear the human needs being expressed. So are you needing comfort? Are you needing security? Are you needing protection? What are the needs of that child that's crying out? What are the needs of that child that's crying out inside of you? Desperate to be heard, desperate for somebody to listen and act. So what do we do with that? What do we do with those needs? We hear them. What do we do with that? And the last part of this practice is tend to those needs. Tend to them. And you might ask, well, what does that mean, tend? What does that look like? And I offer you this picture. So this is my wife, Catherine, with our youngest child, Gloria, after she had a little medical procedure. To me, this is the image of what it means to tend. So if you sit there and you notice this need for, to use my example, for security and comfort, what is it? What do you do to tend to that inside right now? For me, it might be to give myself an embrace, genuine embrace, just like I might hold our 3-year-old. Give to myself what I offer our children. Do it in my own space if I'm worried about someone being embarrassed, or, but give myself that embrace and just hear that cry inside. Give myself that embrace. Sometimes it might look like reassurance. Maybe I'm holding myself and I'm telling myself or thinking to myself inside, I got you. I got you. I'm looking out for you. No matter what, I've got you. And in some cases, it might be an action, right? It might be, I'm going to take myself out on a date tonight. I'm going to take myself out to a movie. I'm going to allow myself to go run in the park, whatever it might be. Maybe it's an action other than one in the moment. But either way, it starts from that place of tending to ourselves, right? Tending to the needs that are there. So I want to wrap up these 3 practices by saying, you're not alone in this. Yeah, it's easy to think when we're in our silos of our homes and silos in front of our computer screens, post-pandemic, in a polarized world, facing down multiple, crises, climate collapse, governmental collapses, economic collapses. It's easy to think we're all dealing with this alone, but we're not alone in this. And I want to now open it up for questions or sharing that any of you may have about the practices I shared in this webinar. From Jeff, I see the question, can you describe how we might use your training in our community? What might it look like? So for that, I'm assuming you mean the practices I shared today. And I think that very much is just the simple 2-part answer I have to that always is, first, practice the practices yourselves so you can share from an authentic place. So I try not to share anything that I haven't practiced myself and sort of understood more clearly what are the challenges and benefits of it. So first, I would suggest integrating these 3 practices into your own life. And then if you find benefit in them, then, find opportunities to share it with others, talk about, hey, I'm finding this useful these days because my nervous system is a bit frazzled, post it on your Facebook page, or, particularly in conversations with people, hey, do you want to try this? I'm noticing this is really helping my nervous system these days. I'm seeing Maria, raise your hand. I'd love to hear from you, Maria, and then I'll tackle some more of the questions in the chat.
Oh, yes, thank you, Jess, and hi, everybody. I've written my problem in the comments. There's a person, I've known him for 2-3 years, and he giggles at everything. That's just the way he is. And some of his gestures, oh my gosh, I don't know what to do, but I've got a very strong reaction every time I'm around this person. And I'm wondering how I can change my attitude.
Thank you for your question, Maria. Yeah, well, I would start with the centering practices I shared today. The first one is maybe less important, but the second, taking a moment to first find some ground in my body, to check out what's going to create just some regulation in my nervous system. Because if I'm bouncing around in my mind with, oh, there he goes again, or oh, I can't stand it when he does that, I'm going to need something to just create a little bit of stability inside. The second is to allow yourself to feel whatever you feel. Your reactions are not wrong or bad. If you're feeling irritated or angry or frustrated about what he's saying or doing, that's okay. Allow yourself to feel it. Give yourself the space to feel that. And then listen inside. What is it behind those feelings that you're having about his expression? Listen inside to see what's the real hurt there? What's really just crying out inside about that? What is it that's there that's really, maybe younger, a childlike place that just it really is getting stimulated by that? And then ask yourself, what is that younger place needing? What is it crying about? What is the meaning of that expression inside of me? And then finally tend to that. Is it you needing some reassurance? Are you needing some shared vulnerability, needing some more deeper connection? And first tend to that within yourself, and you might find that the first thing that comes up, just as a thought, is that maybe what you find is that you don't want to continue connecting with that person because it's not giving you the connection that what you most need inside. I'm not saying that that's the answer or strategy, but I'm just saying it's interesting what can come when we tend to that place inside ourselves. So I invite you to start there and see where that takes you. And thank you for your question.
Thank you, because listening to you, it makes me wonder, or there's something stirring in me that I must have been bullied as a child, and I just feel very unsafe in the presence of this person because the energy is probably the same of ha 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 ha. Anyhow, I'd like to respect the time. Thank you so much, Jessie. Much appreciated, and I'm hoping to participate in your upcoming training. Thank you. I'll leave it at that.
Thank you, Maria. Thank you so much for your question. And I appreciate, by the way, your insight into the safety. I can easily see how that might be part of what's getting stirred. I'm seeing another question about depression, rage, despair after consuming news. I think the first thing that comes is I immediately notice I take a pause to slow down. I think the pause is an underutilized practice, which I could have probably just put in this webinar as well. I'll just add it as a bonus right now. Pausing before responding, pausing before action. And it's what you do in that pause. And I pause to kind of, I would say, I call it digest, or pause to receive, which means allow the full impact of what I'm taking in to really land, which means I actually feel it emotionally. I actually feel it in my gut. So for example, reading, well, what does one do, about the depression, rage, despair after consuming the news if it's overwhelming? Oof. Rather than respond right away, I want to first take in that when I hear that, I feel this hopelessness. I feel this emptiness, this bottomlessness of this sense of never-ending suffering, right? This is actually that third practice that I mentioned. So I'm allowing those feelings, as a workshop leader, as a training leader, I'm supposed to think that having a sense of hopelessness is a negative feeling to have. I need to be confident, I need to have the answer, but actually, I'm going to allow that hopelessness. I'm going to listen to the tears and fears behind it. And for me, it's like this, it's like a child's wail, right? Just like a never-ending child's wail, right? It's like probably the most excruciating thing I can imagine. Hearing a wailing child that you can't, that there's no way you can stop it, right? And the need there is like protection and safety and yeah, it's, I think really just protection and safety is what I keep coming back to. So what does it mean to tend to that? So of course, this is an individual question, you know, not to turn the question back on those of you asking this question, but this is an individual question too. What does it mean to tend to that? For me, part of what it means to tend to that is to admit it out loud. For those of us who can be seen as experts, to admit that we don't have all the answers, but that that's not okay also, right? We don't have all the answers, and it's not okay, it's not enough. There's protection, safety is needed. There is wailing happening. I really appreciate all your time here today. I really hope that what I shared is going to support you in all the conflicts that you are navigating or supporting out there. Blessings, and have a wonderful day or night wherever you are on the planet. Thank you.